Awesome. Welcome back. Okay, Letitia, you can share this. And we're also sponsored today by the NCR Foundation. So I don't know about you, but when I first heard of NCR, they were partnering, I said, oh, I'm not sure about them. And then I walked into Olive Garden to pick up my food, and I realized that their logo is on like the point of sale, like on the printer machine and on the computer or something like that. And I was like, oh, NCR has been everywhere, and I just never even noticed. So their foundation over the decades has been supporting a lot of civil causes, health and human services, arts and cultures, and education. And their grant making is directed in key areas to make the greatest impact in STEM. So STEM education, economic development, and they do disaster response as well. So we have Angela Perry and Ruth and Letitia are going to introduce them. And then, as I said earlier, AT&T is a partner with NCWIT as a whole. So I'll turn it back over to your core presenters here.
Okay, I'll go ahead and introduce Angela Perry. She's IT Executive Director for NCR's supply chain applications across the globe. She is proud to claim to be a Clemson Tiger with a Bachelor of Science degree in Computer Information Systems. She has over 25 years of IT experience working with enterprise requirements planning systems that support the following business processes: product engineering, financials, manufacturing, and supply chain. During her career, she started off as a developer of a manufacturing shop floor control systems. Then she transitioned into project manager ERP deployments at NRC. So she's worked her way up, worked really hard. She then worked for a Soltron contract manufacturer as a program manager for BAAM ERP deployments in Sweden and Puerto Rico. Wow. After a break in her professional career to care for her family, she returned to NCR, serving in various roles as a program manager, enterprise architect, and now executive director for supply chain applications. She volunteers as a small group leader in her church's Women's Connect group and is on the NCR WIN Global Board as their chief of staff. Angela is a mother of 2 sons and a precious Havachon dog who has replaced her sons as the only child at home. So we're honored to have Angela Perry here with us today.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, Ruth, you're muted.
Angela, can you tell us a brief story of how you got involved in computing? Like, what was your spark that led you to this field?
So it was actually when I was in high school. I was looking at what colleges to go to, and Clemson was my college of choice. And at that time, you had to declare a degree when you turned your application in, because they only took so many students in certain classes, or certain programs, colleges. So I was working with my sister, who's like 8 years older than me. She had already was in her career, graduated from college. She's an accountant. She's now actually the chief talent officer for Cadence Bank. So she has really done well in her career. So she's always been my mentor. So we were talking about, since I had to declare right away, she was like, right now, computing science is huge. This is, information systems. This is really be a great track for you to go into. And she knew my personality. That was very organized, very methodical. And at that time, I was a junior in high school when I was submitting my applications, and they had just offered the first, this was in the early 80s. So or mid 80s, I hate to age myself, but they just started their first computer science class in our high school. So she's like, why don't you try it? See what you think. So I met with the school counselor and met with the teacher and started that class and found out I really did have a knack for computer science. And I enjoyed it, the whole how to solve a problem piece of it. And I submitted my application and got into Clemson and never looked back, never changed my degree once. And I did a blend of computer information systems, which was a blend of computer science along with management, accounting, and finance. And then I got a job right out of college, and I have stayed in the computer science and the IT world ever since.
So do you see the job openings that we're talking about in your company specifically?
Oh, definitely. There's just a huge demand right now for computer science majors, a lot in the program management, consulting from a business. How do you map the business processes to the IT applications, business analysts, systems analysts, developers? Definitely. There is a huge need right now, especially, I mean, we are in the digital age. You can't do anything without digitization. So, yeah.
I want to jump in here real quick and introduce our another guest speaker, Jocelyn Bartz. Jocelyn, if you want to say good morning. There she is. And you're probably muted. I'll go ahead and start introducing you. So she's the Director of Technology, Emerging Access, and Contact Solutions at AT&T. In this role, she successfully leads a team of domestic and international client success managers, technology engineers, and tools and process creators who support AT&T's premier client portfolio of commercial accounts and contact center solutions. It is really, really cool that that's a nice way of saying she does a lot, and she's responsible for making other people get a lot done. So she's responsible for the business operations of telephone service delivery and assurance in a 7/24/365 support environment. They never sleep. In 2020, she was awarded Career Communication Group's STEM Woman of Color All-Star. I need more coffee. Jocelyn is a fiercely determined trailblazer who can organize chaos into manageable processes. Jocelyn holds a bachelor's of business administration and finance and earned her leadership certificate from SMU, the Cox School of Business there, corporate executive education. Her passion for civic service started early as a volunteer firefighter. So she's gone from putting out fires that are actually burning things down to putting out virtual fires that could also burn things down. Her current community involvement with various efforts such as Tecnológicas and the American Heart Association has earned her the distinction of a U.S. President's Volunteer Service recipient annually since 2013. She resides in the Dallas area with her family and enjoys the outdoors and traveling. So Jocelyn Bartz, did you get unmuted and you can say good morning?
Hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Hey, don't feel bad. I'm a presenter talking about computer science and I had to log off and log back on because of computer problems. So we're going to turn it over to Dana and Jocelyn and Angela.
Yeah, and I think Letitia is also prepared to ask some questions because, baby might not give us the whole time on an
Yeah, no problem. Jocelyn, can you kind of give us a brief story of how you got involved into computing and what your spark was?
Absolutely. Thank you for the time and the privilege to be able to talk this morning with you all. Yes, I understand technology doesn't always work as anticipated. I think we all felt that as we went through the pandemic and we had to live in this virtual world. So apologies for not being unmuted nor on camera earlier. Yes, so I came into the technology world a little different. Back in my day, I didn't know, what technology was. I remember doing my college applications in the Macintosh lab on a little computer. So that's not going to tell you how old I am because I will not admit to what that age is. But I've been able to, watch how technology has grown throughout the years. I've been with AT&T for 23 years. I actually started my career in telecom doing financials. My degree is in finance, and I thought I was going to grow up to work for the Federal Reserve Bank, which I did have a stint doing. I was a bank examiner. I was an internal auditor. I counted lots of money, and I thought I was in the glory of actually using my degree to the best of my ability. I was started into telecom with an old company, if you remember from the long distant days, called MCI WorldCom, and that's where I got my first flavor for technology. MCI sadly did not end up as a prosperous telecommunications company, and we had to close the doors. I was one of the last people that had to close the lights on that business. But as we know, fate always has their plan in action, and I ended up at the old telephone company of Southwestern Bell. And I was over there doing the finances there, just doing typical stuff that I had done in my previous financial world, audits, accounting, financial analysis. Because I was in telecom, I was able to have a front seat to figuring out how Southwestern Bell became very well renowned in the wireless world. I actually did most of my career for Singular Wireless, if you remember them. And so that was in the day when wireless was being rolled out, and it was the wild, wild west. So I like to say we did things quickly. We did it with bubblegum and baling wire. We were having to solve problems and get things to market quickly. If you remember the days of the old cellular bag phones, and then that rolled into, the BlackBerries, which ultimately got us into the world of the iPhone. And that's what our, world of, my sons, I have 2 college-bound sons now, that's all they know, right? They're inherently technologically natives. So it's been a glorious career. Now, how did I end up as a technology director? Well, good question, because I'm a finance person. Well, as we know, finance people are very analytical in nature, and so I was asked to come over and lead a group of engineers. Oh my gosh, how do I do that? Well, it's a lot of problem solving. So that's how I came into the realm of operations. My team, like I said, are engineers, client success managers, 24/7 help desk people that solve the problem for AT&T commercial clients. So we're actually doing the coding of platforms. We're creating new technologies for them because they are looking to AT&T to help them solve their technology issues. We have clients such as American Airlines, if you've ever gone to Home Depot, Citibank, CVS Caremark. Those are all big AT&T clients that my team serves. So the key is really not necessarily having the coding background, but having the ability to solve problems.
I want to jump in and ask you if you'd expand a little bit on, because I have kind of know this, where you might be going. You said your sons are digital natives. Can you expound on that a little bit? Because some of us are not digital natives.
Nor am I, right? So we've kind of had to learn and grow into that. So if you think about, most everyone is connected to their cell phones, right? And as these children come into the world that is all connected by technology, if you think about if you have a Google in your house that can talk to your washing machine, talks to your refrigerator, talks to whatever connected device you can turn on your lights at home. That is all very normal for them, right? They have grown up in a world where that's just how it is, right? I was talking about them just recently, how when I applied for college, I actually had to handwrite applications, mail them after I had asked the universities to mail the packet to me. Now, to them, that was very foreign. What do you mean? Could you not go online and just find out information about the college you wanted to go to? And I'm like, no, that was something that you had to go to the library. You had to figure out ways of collecting information that wasn't at your fingertips. So when I say they're digital natives, everything is instantaneous as it relates to information, right, wrong, or indifferent. They know how to get what they need in an immediate increment of time of speed, and they do that very, very smoothly, right? They do not hesitate on how to make connections, and that's what I mean, because that's the world they have grown up in.
Jocelyn, thank you. You just touched on that concept of computer science plus X, computer science and the intersection of other interests. Angela, how do you see this concept show up in the work that you do with the teams of people that you work with?
So I think it's very important to have a background in understanding how business works end to end. And with that, the background I had in my education, it was not just computer science, but it was almost a double major in account management. So I'm able to talk with the business, understand from a supply chain perspective what products they need to go to market. How do you define that bill of material? How does it flow into a supply plan, demand plan? How do you procure products? How do you decide how are you going to source it, who your suppliers are? Connecting with how do you communicate with your suppliers from an EDI perspective, electronic data interchange? What manufacturing steps are you going to do? So it's very important in my world of supply chain that I understand the business side of it and having that core business knowledge of understanding what a financial P&L is and accounting is. Because everything you do in the business from a transactional perspective in supply chain, it all comes down to material transactions, to accounting, to cost of goods sold, to revenue, and understanding those concepts. So I definitely see I couldn't do computer science without understanding the business terminology and processes.
That's a good point. I'm hearing so many different career choices that tie into the CS plus X from Angela and Jocelyn. I'm really excited to have some conversations with some of my seniors this week and give them some different career options. So think about school. What advice or support could younger you have benefited from, Jocelyn? Maybe you received support at your school. If so, you can shout out to those who supported you and just kind of tell us how they supported you, what exposure opportunities you had, maybe from your counselor, or encouragement and guidance with scholarships in college.
Good questions, and I will shout out to all the counselors that are on this call because it was instrumental for me to have that advocate that believed in me. Luckily, my mother was a high school teacher, so I had a lot of pushing along as to expectations of what I was going to grow up to be. I was supposed to be an attorney, by the way, as per her dream. But it was truly the high school counselor and then my advisor in college that said, you know what, these are probably your strengths. Not saying you can't go and do law, but you do more calculations. You're really good at understanding, trends. So maybe you need to lean into more of a mathematical accounting type of perspective. And I hadn't really thought about it. And I'm like, accounting doesn't sound very glamorous. A lawyer sounds much better. Plus, it'll take my mother and make her satisfied. But it was truly those discussions with a counselor to say, hey, have you thought about this, right? Hey, and my college counselor was really good, my advisor, because I was a December graduate. So I was planning to go to law school. I could not go to law school until August, right? Law schools only start in the fall. So I said, well, you know what? I think I'm going to just start my master's. I'll get a master's while I'm getting my law degree. And my advisor in university said, you know what? You've got this degree. Go put it to action. Go put yourself out there. Go see what the world has. You have the academics, now go apply it into the real world, much like Dana said. Go use that business acumen to do something exciting. And I was really hesitant, but that was actually the fork in the road, because once I went in and it was great. I was interviewing and I had lots of opportunities to choose from. And I was just a small town girl in southern New Mexico, really thought that was, the extent of the world in my little tiny town. But then to, be flown to Chicago to be interviewing with GM, or flying to Houston to interview with Shell Petroleum, these really expanded my view as like, oh my gosh, there's a whole huge world out there. So I think, from the perspective of saying, go and try what's happening in the world. If I think we forget, even as grown-ups, that, failure is not fatal. It's a learning experience. And this is something I'm trying to ingrain with my sons. If it doesn't work out, okay, pivot, go do something different. It's not going to be the end of the life. A bad day doesn't make for a bad life. It's just you take your toys, you figure out how you figure out what to do best, and you move on. And usually the next experience, if I tell them, if it doesn't make for a good story, then it's actually value add, and either way, you're going to have a good experience out of it. So I think that is probably the most critical advice I would tell myself, because I was very worried about, oh my goodness, maybe if I shouldn't do that because I really don't know it. Similar as to when I jumped into this job, you know what, I don't know anything about engineers. How am I going to add value? Well, you know what, they're like now my second hand. And they taught me what I needed to know to be successful. And now we're a family that's really doing what our customers need to do to make AT&T successful.
Jocelyn, my husband comes from a background similarly. And he said that one of the things he had to learn how to do was speak boardroom and speak geek, and had to learn how to combine those two worlds in order for those in the boardroom to understand what it is that those that are the engineers and the programmers. So being able to get out there and put together those two worlds in a way that everyone can understand is such a good skill. If you had to tell one of our high school kids, and Angela, you're going to have a little bit of a moment to think about this. If you had to tell a high school student what to do with some of those varied skills and how they could possibly come together in technology, what are some things you think you might tell them? And by the way, when you said you were a small town girl, I immediately went to the Journey song. I don't know if anybody else on here went to the Journey song, but there, yep, good. Sharon, thank you. But Jocelyn, if you could answer that, please.
Yes, absolutely. I would tell them to, figure out what they want to go and learn about, right? If maybe they're not, maybe they're not a programmer by nature, and that's fine. But if maybe it's something, maybe they want to become an astronaut, let's say, go and figure out how you get your foot in the door. Maybe you're not going to be an astronaut tomorrow with NASA, but if you can start with at NASA doing so, let's even be more simplistic, as a mailroom person. And then you figure out, okay, here are these areas of the business in NASA that are interesting to me, and maybe I want to be an analyst doing, jet propelled fusion, analyst type of stuff. Get yourself into the realm of where you want to be and start learning about what the business is from the ground up. It's not until you get there that you can actually assess what you want to be. Just like I said, I wanted to be the next Federal Reserve, Alan Greenspan, head of the Central Bank of the U.S. Once I got there, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'd rather go do this other stuff. So the advice I'd give to the high schoolers is go and figure out where you want to be, where you want to land, get your foot in the door, and then start understanding those parts of the business, because it's a vast world in these companies, and then figure out where your talents lie that you can go and make a difference. And I think that's what we need to unleash in our youth, that, hey, you can go very somewhere, go be whatever you want to be, but you need to also align your talents with the needs of the business, because that will be the true secret sauce of what you can give to the future of the world.
Angela, you've had a moment to kind of think about your response. Thank you, Jocelyn, very much. What would you say? How could you tell those kids put together all these things? What would you share?
So I'm going to reflect on my children. I have grown children. They're both boys. They're in their mid-20s, late 20s. And how I coached them when they were going through the process was, for one thing, I think it's very unusual for somebody coming up, being 16 years old, 17 years old, know what they want to do for the rest of their life. I think it's really, hard for these universities for them to claim a degree when they come in and do their application. I was lucky when I did mine that I had the right mentor in place with my sister who knew what my gifts were, what my strengths were, organization, knew what the market was like. And she guided me to something she thought was a fit. And she was right because she knew me better than I knew myself. So I think that's one key thing I would say is get a good mentor. Not someone your own age, someone who's wiser, older, who's been there, done that, is in the actual business world or computing world and professional world, and get that mentor in place, and ask for that guidance and listen. The second thing I worked with on my kids is I look at Joshua, my oldest. He really didn't have a lot of direction what he wanted to do, and he got into marketing for his college degree. And at that time, when he was at University of Georgia, digital marketing was starting to become a thing. So I know all of you are going, oh my gosh, I mean, those pop-up ads that come up when you're doing a Bing keyword search. And that's what he does now for a profession, is actually he works with firms that they buy those keywords to get their ads to come up with that based on your interests. So that's the profession he ended up getting into. When he was in college, it was a brand new field, really. And just now colleges were starting to offer that as a major. And so he actually went out and he did free internships. There are companies out there that will take young people if you work for free. Maybe they don't have the budget to have paid internships. So he looked for those volunteer opportunities that were in those areas to see whether or not that was his interest. And that actually helped twofold. He found out he liked it. And the second, he gave him some meat to put on his resume. Then he worked with his professors. It's amazing, some of these professors in these new areas, how much they really help their students. She actually had her own job fair, worked with her own professional network, and did her own job fair for digital marketing. And that is how my son found his job and found his placement, was because of the relationship he had with his college professor and the networking that she had and brought to the table. So again, I look at my kids and really it was those mentors that they had. My youngest son is getting his PhD in biomed engineering at University of Virginia. And how he got into the biomed track was, again, his high school teachers, his AP science teachers. They were incredible mentors to him and guiding him into the type of classes he needed to take, the accelerated math, the STEM courses he needed to get into Georgia Tech and then into University of Virginia. And he never changed his major, which is amazing. And I really give credit to his high school teachers who knew him and gave him that challenge and gave him that proper mentoring. So my biggest advice to young ladies and men and gentlemen in high school, get a good mentor.
What ways would you suggest that they look out for mentors? Now, I know we have the TEALS program, and there's actually someone that has joined us on here that I'm hoping he's going to put some comments in the chat box about TEALS and their volunteer program. I'm not going to put him on the spot, but I know him pretty well, so I'm hoping he's going to put some things in the chat box. How do you go about finding these internships? I know you said get a mentor, But let's just say you don't have the opportunity to get a mentor. What's a good way to try to find these internships? Either one of you ladies.
Well, I think my
I like,
son, oh, you go ahead, go Jocelyn.
sorry, Angela. Just like I said, the digital natives, they know how to Google search. You know, if they want to find something, they're very motivated. It's the point of instilling the idea that, hey, you know, there are these opportunities out there. You're probably not going to get any hamburger money out of it, but it's going to give you the way to put something on the resume. And especially as high schoolers, I think that's important because a lot of people, like my youngest, he went to go apply at Target. They would not hire him because he had no real work experience. Okay, well, how do you get that? When you find places that will say, you're willing to do this for free? Absolutely, let me teach you, right? And it's just a point of going back, well, where do you think you want to learn something? What interests you? Maybe, you know, maybe it's the yogurt shop down the street that maybe they're not looking to hire, but they're willing to, you know, have someone who comes in and does a side-by-side, you know, field in the day so they learn how business in a yogurt shop actually happens.
Also looking at charities, volunteer work.
Mm.
You know, don't you think some of those organizations would love to get some free internship help from someone who's ambitious and wanting to challenge themselves?
Definitely. I was speaking with someone the other day. They were trying to figure out how to get more people that they were in the counseling world, and they were trying to figure out how to get more people so that they knew what they were getting from the ground up. Answering the phone. Being a receptionist anywhere gives you such a feel for the company, and you know who gets the most calls. Does Jocelyn get the most calls, or does this person, you know, how many people reach out to Angela? So just having that, you know, you wouldn't think about it, but being a receptionist, your receptionist can find out an awful lot. It's like having a good school secretary. They actually run the school. A good receptionist can really get in on the ground floor. And the other thing about being a receptionist is, as you both ladies said, if you're willing to come in and do something that we might consider mundane, that speaks to you as to whether I want to hire you in my company or not.
That's correct.
Letitia,
Because
I'm sorry,
at the
I
end
get
of the day,
excited.
and it's a good point and something, you know, yes, we want all our children to go and aspire to greatness in the world, but there are no lesser jobs. Everyone's role, regardless if it's the janitor or the CEO, is contributing to the success of that company. And I think we have to remind people of that unless we're all together working, it's not going to work. And the CEO can't be the CEO if the employee bathroom has overflowing toilets. It's not a good scene, right? So everybody has value to contribute, and it's just the point of getting the person into that space to say, I'm willing to learn whatever it takes. I'll start here, and it's through relationship, it's through stability of what they're contributing will, you know, heighten them to the point where someone will ask them, and the mentorship comes naturally. Hey, Sally, you've done a great job answering these phones. Do you think you can help me with this special project over here? And that's how they start getting more involved.
Speaking on what you just said, I want to piggyback, Jocelyn. Here at our school, we have what we call Future Fridays, where since COVID, we set up Zoom meetings. We're out here in West Texas. So one of the examples I have is an oil company. And we, of course, had some management people, financial, a custodian, like you said, a secretary, 5 different people from the company. And we almost set it up as a competition. So they kind of talked about what they did, and they were trying to convince the kids that their job was best. So the kids had fun going back and forth and learning about it. And at the end, we did a poll with them, and the kids got to kind of pick which position in the company. And surprisingly, it wasn't always like the top. Sometimes they really presented some other positions in the company in a way that the students got excited about it. So the participants have a chance to ask questions as well. So we'll give them a little bit of time. If you want to ask a question, just unmute or raise your hand. You can put it in the chat. While they're thinking, I just kind of like to know what it's like being a woman in technology. How are you guys handling your social expectations? Possibly being one of few women, or whatever you think students and educators should know about that. If you could share that with us.
Well, in my area, in the supply chain world, there's not a lot of women. So there's many meetings that I'm in where I look around the room and I'm the only female in there. But it's never bothered me. I think you just, self-confidence is what you need in your abilities. And people will recognize if you deliver what you say you're going to do, that you gain that respect. So I have never felt that difference, except for just looking at the room and just noticing I was the only girl in the room. That's it. It's never has made me feel uncomfortable, made me feel like I was not able to advance.
From my perspective, it's probably the polar opposite, because I came from a financial environment where, there were a lot of women in the room. And then I went into engineering technology space where I was the only one. And it wasn't that as much as I would like to believe, we're homogenizing the workspace where there's more inclusiveness. No, my seat was not at the table, it was that one in the corner, because all the men were already at the table. So it was a point that I knew if I had value for what I was contributing, I was going to have to use sharp elbows to make sure that that table had space for me. And I was going to pull my chair up and make sure my voice was heard. Now, for a lot of people, that's an uncomfortable space. But I had self-confidence to know that what my voice had to contribute mattered. And it mattered so much that, through conditioning, sadly, when that table was filled, there was a spot for me. Going back to what Angela said, that the respect was earned, that, I was here to contribute, I was here to solve problems, I was here to help. So, at first, like I said, you kind of have to use those sharp elbows, and I have been known, sadly, that I've had that, through discussions with my supervisors. But if that's the only way you can get to the table, then that's what I'm going to do.
Now, I am on the board of our Women in NCR. So there are just great resources now that we have that I didn't have at the beginning of my career, the BRG groups, business resource groups, where, companies are realizing we need extra support. And so that has been great, though, just to have that mentoring within our own women's group, having that support, having that collaboration, so you don't feel like you're alone and you're able to get the right advice of how to advance your career and support each other. So there's a lot more tools and available now in the workforce than there was when we just started, Jocelyn, right? So.
Absolutely. And to that point, I think what, at least as women, is we need to have that sense of that we're going to pull up those behind us, right? If we got that space, we need to do what's best to pull up the candidates, the women, to help fulfill that room with more of those voices. I always say when one candle lights the other, it doesn't diminish the light. So we need to make sure that we have lots of candles in that room.
So we have several counselors on here, some computer science teachers, regular teachers. We have a college level and administrators. We're just kind of bringing this awareness to light. Do you have any advice specifically for this group of educators working on the forefront with the students? Like, what's one thing that stands out to you that we could tell the students that would make a difference? Because some kids don't have that sharp elbow, and if their teacher doesn't look like them in computer science, or their classmates don't look like them, they're kind of turned away, but they have a lot to bring to the table.
Yeah, for me, I think the best advice I could give is don't put any limitations. You know, I look at my oldest son, and one of his teachers in high school told him that he wasn't really going to be college material. And, you know, his dream was to go to Notre Dame. And he applied to Notre Dame and unfortunately did not get in. So those echoes of those voices of people who have influence, be it a teacher, a counselor, whomever, really resonate in people's hearts. So when he didn't get into Notre Dame, his world was crushed, right? And it was a point that it's like, okay, now what, right? Going back to the pivot aspect, as a mother, as our parents to him, we're like, okay, you didn't go to Notre Dame, now what? And what he problem solved, we encouraged him to problem solve and say, well, where do you want to end up? Now, in his story, and you know, you guys could judge me later. He said, well, I want to go, because he has a very traveler spirit. He's like, I want to go study in Rome, Italy. I'm like, sure, whatever, go for it. And find me a college that accepts you because you don't speak Italian. And the booger, you know, he did. He took the challenge and he found an American university located in Rome, Italy. And he said, this is where I want to go. Based on him, we're like, go for it. We did. And so we let our 18-year-old go off to study in Rome, Italy, and because we want to encourage him to silence that, you know, negative word of his teacher that said, you can't do it. You will never get into Notre Dame. And it has become an adventure of a lifetime for him. So to me, don't put limitations on your students, on those, even, you know, your coworkers. If they can dream it, let them do it. Why not?
You know, someone said in here in the chat, it's a tough sale for a lot of our female students because representation absolutely does matter. And adolescents specifically aren't notorious for being okay being in uncomfortable spaces. I want to hear from some of my fellow school counselors. How do we recruit those babies in packs? Jump in, because that's a lot of times with adolescents, they roam in packs. So how do you get them what are some things that you're doing in your school counseling world to kind of normalize some of this?
I know the NCWIT program Aspirations in Computing. So the students, I don't know if you guys have talked about this yet, but it's an award that that NCWIT does for students that are aspiring to be in technology careers. So you don't have done anything miraculous yet when you're applying in high school, but it's created a sense of community, I know, for students. So I knew girls that then, you know, got this award in high school, got plugged into a Facebook community of other students that have gotten awards. But then when they were looking at colleges, they were then chatting like, well, who's here at this college? And sort of creating their own systems of support as girls in technology to support one another. And then also as a school counselor, I like to try to like recruit in pairs. So when I have a student that's like kind of interested, but a little bit nervous about it, like I will, you know, encourage them to bring a friend along. I've also specifically looked at our rosters before and changed classes based off of how many enter it. So like we have mechanics classes too. And oftentimes there's just like one girl, if I see one girl's in one section in the summer and one girl's in another section, like I will check a couple of classes that I know have this phenomenon and will like adjust schedules in the summer if I can, so that it's not just like one girl in the class. So that's, as a school counselor, one of the things that I do.
I know one of the things I did was I talked to a group of girls one day about cybersecurity. And I used the example of, if you have to tell your group of friends something, but you don't want part of that information to get out, which friend do you not tell it to? I said, because that will be your cyber leak. So if I'm looking at this group and I know I can tell Angela something and Jocelyn and Dana and Letitia something, but I leave Lisa out simply because Lisa's camera is on and I see her. I leave Lisa out of certain aspects because Lisa might be my cyber leak. So one of those things that I teach them is when you think about how you interact with your friends, which one do you not tell important stuff to? Because that's your cyber leak. So getting it in language that they understand that, you know, I have all these friends, but I know that I can tell Angela this and I can tell Jocelyn this, but Dana, I'm gonna leave out of this part. And Lisa may only get the overview. Lisa, I'm only picking on you because I can see you. So anybody want to jump in there? Any of my fellow counselors? I love the cheerleader and the coding link. That was cool.
Angela McGill, sorry, do you want to, would you share at all about the female coding teacher does for recruiting? What you mean by girls dominated activities?
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
She incorporates them with the events that they do. Because, you know, when you go to a competition or an event, there's lots of downtime. And so their friends come to those events as well. And so she just kind of pulls them all together and starts talking about some aspect of coding or the esports competitions or careers. You know, she uses every opportunity. And so every little bit of information that I get, such as a conference like this, I pour it to her because I know that the kids are going to get the information.
Thank you, Angela. I'm looking, oh, SPED students. So I noticed that someone had something on here about SPED students. Leslie, if you want to unmute and tell us a little bit more. Dana, if I remember, we actually did a program about incorporating our SPED students into and making sure they had those access. I know that my youngest son has autism. And so it's amazing how some of our students think about things and we sometimes leave them out of the conversation because we think, oh, they won't get that or, oh, they won't understand that. When actually my kiddo with autism is the one that teaches me things, and because he's going to teach me in the sequence in which it needs to go so that I learn it correctly. So Leslie, if you want to jump in.
Yes, I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yes.
Okay, my video does not work, but my mic does. I've been a special ed teacher for many years at the secondary level, currently at middle school and previously at high school. And I've just seen it, like someone was saying earlier, as I think a parent was saying of a special needs kids was saying how discouraging it was for their kid to hear someone tell them that they couldn't do something. And I've seen that happen, and it really influences the child either way. If, you know, I've always tried to tell my students on a positive note to, you know, go for their dreams. And, you know, even if I don't tell them this, but even if they do fall short, they're going to fall somewhere near there. They may not, you know, get into that prestige university, but they will, you know that they can, you know, just like anybody else, have those options open for them. And, you know, being an intern as a school counselor, I feel like I could really impact those conversations, even in the middle school, because that's when they tend to begin to, you know, think about their future and, you know, things that they're good at and things that they excel at, because they all have something that they're going to be able to excel at and show others that, you know, that they're, you know, at the top of whatever it may be, whether it be computers or some kind of technology. Even like our kids really like the video game design type stuff, and some of them are amazing. So it's, it's meeting that kid wherever their strength is and taking it to that, to that level.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm going to kick it to Dana because I get super, super excited and I can seriously continue this discussion. Angela, you're awesome. Jocelyn, you're awesome. I thank you for your insights and for being boots on the ground right now. So I'm going to
Yeah. I appreciate
out.
your stories. I feel like this was a cool opportunity because both of you came to leadership positions in technology from, two different pathways, which is really valuable to see, as well as two different experiences in your field. So I'm really thankful you're here. Anything else that, our conversation that you want to add or that we missed, Jocelyn?
I think just the encouragement, right? We live in a very crazy world nowadays. And, just giving grace when grace is needed, especially in this very delicate time of the world, especially for those of you who are touching the young lives, because that's our future. We know that. And I thank you immensely for taking those roles on. As a daughter of a teacher for 38 years, it's such an important job that is pretty thankless, especially in today's world. So as an employer, I'm thanking you now because what you're doing matters and your words resonate in those little hearts. So you might not know what those futures hold, but they might be on a video call, 30 years from now talking about the imprint you made on them, and you have no clue. So thank you for your service.
I echo her words. Thank you so much for what you're doing. I think it's incredible that you're wanting to invest your lives into these young students, and especially trying to help young ladies advance in the STEM career. I was telling originally with Dana, is like back when I started, I didn't feel like I'm a gender minority in the whole computer science world. I had a lot of peers that were females that were in my graduating class with me. But now looking and I'm hiring, I've seen a drop in how many women are in the technology field. And it's like, well, how did that happen? How did we go back? And so we need that encouragement and letting them see that they can advance in these types of careers. We need all types of people in technology because technology touches all of us. When you look at social media, everybody is touched by technology one way or the other. And we need all types of people to contribute to this technology, to this career path. So we all can benefit from all ideas, not just one type of people's ideas. So thank you for your service, and we appreciate y'all inviting us today.
Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
Okay. So I am going to share with you guys my screen. Hold on. And so here at NCWIT, we like to share a lot of tools with you. So if you are interested in more conversations like this, you can check out our upcoming webinars. So I will, at the end, we'll drop those, this link in this chat to sign up again about, we have computer science plus barbering, leveraging the social and cultural impact of barbering to support African-American boys and youth interested. We're going to have one on finance again, one on health services, and then there's also recordings of other things, CS plus art, reinvented STEAM, some of the ethics behind computer science, so and cybersecurity. So there's a whole bunch of things that you can share with your students and check out to sort of help us on this advising journey. So, let me come back to where we were, guys. Okay. Uh-oh, if it does from the beginning, because I went too fast here, we'll see how it does for me here today. Oh, I think we're okay. So when we are working with our students, there's this tool I wanted to share with you, this short video. So Jackie brought up representation for our students. So creating lessons, inviting speakers that may look like our students. So one of the first things that I did after an NCWIT training is my job was already to do our career seminars throughout the school year. So my one of my career seminars I did on computer science, and I just invited women panelists. So I didn't like say this is the women in computer science panel. That's who I invited, because everybody can learn from any type of person. So I made sure diversity in who those women were, professors, in range of ethnicities and backgrounds. So this is one of the things, as you're growing your programs, and especially with elementary as well, like the messages that students see just subtly about, are we talking about inventors like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, or are we highlighting other people in computer science? So why did it not play my video? Okay, I might have to drop this one in the chat. There it goes. Can you guys hear that?
I was first introduced into computer science when I was in high school.
My first experience with technology was when I was very young, about 6 years old.
It was part of our curriculum at the school I went to.
There I made my way into computer science class, and I loved it so much that I ended up double majoring in both theater and computer science.
Growing up as a kid in the inner city, I never learned a thing about coding, and it's so important.
All my girlfriends, I think, have taken a computer science class, and I'm the odd person out right now.
Having access to technology, and for me in particular, being able to code was a multiplier.
I wanted to do computer graphics. I wanted to be a graphic designer. And people found out, they laughed at me, and, all these things. And I'm like, man, I don't care. I think it's cool. And, I'm learning a lot. And some of my friends have jobs.
I mean, the opportunities are endless for somebody who's getting into computer science, because that's a job that's in high demand right now.
We have all different types of people who work in computer science.
We need the participation of more women, more people of color, to provide a different perspective and a different lens on which problems matter and how we should approach these problems.
It's not just programming, it's not just building things, it's an entire different way of seeing the world.
There's a way that even when you're coding, you can help make this world a better place.
And it's a really fun place to be right now.
I hope you guys want to be entrepreneurs. You want to have your own business. You want to create an opportunity for your family. You want to create your own app or your own platform or whatever. And I'm here to say today that you guys can do that.
Computer science for everyone, literally everyone. Some people think you have to be a genius to get it and understand it. It's so far from the truth.
I know it can be intimidating. A lot of things are intimidating, but what isn't?
Don't give up. Don't be discouraged. Don't let anybody tell you that you cannot do something.
If you're a high school student that's thought about taking computer science, just go after it.
We need diverse teams of people in order to make products that reflect what our world looks like.
It's not just a means to an end. It's this thing that gives us hope to solve every problem that the world presents.
We're on a mission to help change the face of computer science.
We're going to learn to code together, bring the family, gather around.
Anybody can do it. You should try.
If you can dream it, you can do it.
Push yourself. Anybody can learn. Just give it a try.
So if you're sort of thinking right now, maybe with your own kids, or wanting to explore a little bit more for yourself as as students, check out either of these resources, code.org or cyber.org, their courses or their careers. They have some really good tools just to introduce the idea of some of this computational thinking and give it a try in a very fun, light way. Elsa and Anna on an adventure, or, dance parties. That's one of my favorite ones. So you can check those out. Okay, so I'm gonna have Ruth and Letitia share a little bit more about what are